Have you been looking at your fantasy football dynasty league team after your rookie draft and wonder, why the hell did I draft those players? Are you often feeling like you're losing your league because you don't know how to draft your rookies? Well, today we're going to talk about the top reasons why you keep failing during your fantasy football dynasty league draft. Let's get it.
Welcome to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast with Waiver Wire Queen.
All right, y'all, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football or if you're interested in learning how to play fantasy football. We have a lot of great content for you, which will help you prepare for the season so you can stay ahead of your competition, because the ultimate goal is to win. And that's all we're trying to do in 2022 is win all of our fantasy football leagues. Let's talk about what a dynasty league is. A dynasty league is different from a redraft league. A redraft league, you pretty much you draft a new team every year. A dynasty league, you draft your team and you keep your team from year to year. It does not change. You have supplemental drafts, which for the most part consist of rookies, and you draft rookies. There are some leagues that I've been a part that allow you to draft rookies and free agents. I prefer to just stick to the rookies. So if you've already been a part of a dynasty league and you are wondering why you keep losing, why is your team not winning or performing at a high level, and you're looking after your drafts and you're like, oh, why did I draft those players? Because those players are not that good, and I could have picked them up off of waivers. So we're going to talk about some of the reasons why you are failing and losing during your rookie drafts. Some people are losing before they even draft because, let's be real, they just aren't playing the game correctly. And again, if you are playing your dynasty league the way you play your redraft league, you're definitely setting yourself up to fail. And guess what? We're not trying to fail. We're trying to win as much as we can. And this is how you're going to, these are some of the things you're going to stop doing. So one of the main reasons why you are losing and failing during your rookie drafts is because you don't even do any research. You can't have a dynasty team and neglect your team. If you're not researching the players who you potentially should have to draft, then you're in the wrong fantasy football format. You should be in a redraft league because it doesn't take a lot of effort in a redraft league. People still do research, but if you're having a dynasty league, it's on a whole nother level because you pretty much are running your team. So if you're not researching these rookies, how do you know which players you should be drafting when it's time to draft? Okay, you're not going to know, and you may end up making some terrible decisions during your draft because you haven't done any research and you don't know who the sleepers are. You don't know where to draft people. You don't understand what their ADP is. You don't understand what's going on because you haven't done your homework. If you're in school and you have a test and you haven't studied all semester, most cases you're going to fail the test, right? That's just what it is. If you're not doing the research that you need to do to be successful, then you're going to lose every season. You're going to look at your team at the end of those rookie drafts and wonder, what the hell just happened? Because you're going to look at your team and say, I don't even know why I drafted this player. And if you are constantly having those thoughts and you're looking at everyone else in your league's team and you're like, they had a really good draft, and you can't say the same for yourself, or you don't feel confident that you had a good draft, then most likely you didn't. And it's one, because you're not even researching. You have to take the time to understand each player. It may take time, but again, if you are in a dynasty league, it's because you enjoy playing fantasy football. So you don't mind putting in a little effort and extra time into having a big board. You should have a big board with all of the rookie players. I don't care if it's 30. You should have a list of all of the rookie players that were drafted and have information on the undrafted rookies, because some of those players may be picked up and land in a favorable situation, which may help. For instance, Ross went undrafted and he's picked up by the Chiefs, which were in need of a young wide receiver. So that may end up paying off. So if you were able to draft Ross late at the end of your rookie draft, good move. Or if you were able to pick him up, great move. But if you don't know these things because you haven't done any research, you're not watching the NFL draft, you're not studying players, whether that is looking at their stats and watching video and watching footage, then you pretty much are handing over your money every year knowing that I'm not going to win because I'm not even putting the time and effort into my team. Do your research, become familiar with all of the rookies, and make sure you have the undrafted rookies as well as players you consider sleepers. Another reason why you are losing your drafts is you're afraid to take chances. You have to take chances. You can't just sit there and play a game to where you don't make any type of trades and you just don't make any moves. You have to trade. You have to make claims. You're going to have to make trades. You're going to have to pretty much try to put in claims for players who are on waivers. You're going to have to step your negotiating skills up. Otherwise, other teams may take advantage of you when it comes to trading. But if you're not even trying to trade to improve your team, again, you might as well just hand over the bragging rights because you're not even going to be in the game to win. If you have an older team in a Dynasty League, you may want to start considering trading some of your players are close to retirement to see if you can acquire some younger assets. And that may not even be a player. It may be in the form of draft picks. You may have to do that in order to improve your team. I have a team that was horrible. So I traded away most of my top players and acquired draft capital, pretty much draft picks, and I started a rebuild. You may have to embark on the journey of a rebuild. And guess what? You're going to have to do what you're going to have to do. And if you are afraid to take those chances and make the trades, which will position your team to be successful later on, then you're going to lose. And again, you're going to be handing over those bragging rights and the league fee to someone else to say thank you from your hand to my hand every single year. Okay. Acquire more assets if you can. Keep playing the game because that is what everyone else is doing. And stop second guessing your moves during your draft. If you are on the board and you are drafting and you feel like this is your guy, then take your guy. While other people in your league may be laughing, talking crap, they may have been considering that same player, but you picked that player. I had in one league a gentleman, he took Traylon Burks with the first pick in the draft. Now, no one was expecting that because one, he had just traded for a wide receiver and he had some other wide receivers, and the need looked like maybe running back should have been the pick, Breece Hall. I feel like Breece Hall should be the answer at 101 in every draft, but everyone's different. And of course, everyone's laughing and ha 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 ha. It did kind of change the first round of the draft based on everyone's projections. But however, that was his guy, and he didn't have a pick in the second round or any more picks in the first round. So he went and got his guy. It may work out, it may not work out, but that was his guy. And it is what it is. So don't second guess what you're doing because other people are laughing and talking crap. You already know they're going to talk crap, whether you do good things or bad things in fantasy. It's just a part of the game. It can be fun. It can be annoying. But guess what? It ain't going away. So toughen up. And don't second guess whatever moves and decisions you make. If you are picking Traylon Burks at 101 and that's who you want, and you know that you don't have another way to get him, then pick your guy. Had another guy, took Kenny Pickett early in the first round. Now, I wouldn't have taken him early, but he needed a quarterback. Kenny Pickett had the draft capital, and he didn't have any more picks until the third or fourth round. So we already knew that Kenny Pickett wasn't going to make it out of the first round, and he wasn't going to be there in the third round. So he got his guy. He had to make a move. If you make a move, be confident in those moves. Another reason why you are failing during your rookie drafts, which is going to cause you to lose your league, is you are ignoring later rounds and your bench. There are at least 4 to 5 rounds in your supplemental rookie drafts, okay? You cannot neglect rounds 3, 4, and 5 just because, well, I got my guy in the first and second round. Well, you may draft some gems in the third, fourth, and fifth round. Do not neglect to do your research on who are the sleepers in the draft, because those guys may be the ones available in the later rounds. There may be players in the later rounds that no one is talking about and you don't even know their name, but these guys are solid and they may have fallen into a favorable situation based on their landing spot. So you cannot neglect those rounds. You don't burn picks. Now, if you want to trade those picks for later picks in future drafts, fine. But if you're going to draft in the third, fourth, and fifth round, take it seriously because you may miss out on player. I had one draft and Michi went in the third round. I'm familiar with Michi. Someone else may not be familiar with Michi and may have passed him up for someone who was undrafted or didn't have the talent that he did. So again, every player that is drafted during the NFL draft, you should have in your big board. Players who are undrafted and you felt like prior to the draft they should have been drafted, or you hear they've landed in a favorable situation, you add them to your big board as well, because these are the guys you may have to consider late in drafts. So do not ignore those players. There's a lot of content out there that will help you prepare for your draft, which is why you're going to subscribe to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast, because we have a lot of material out there which will help you prepare for your drafts, whether that is the Dynasty, Redraft, Keeper. We have all of the material for you, and that's going to help you improve during your drafts. You cannot neglect those rounds. No one talks about the later rounds, but you really have to. I know one guy who said he loves the fourth and fifth rounds. Well, you should, because you may have picks in those rounds, and that is where you will be building your bench. So do not neglect those rounds because there is talent throughout the whole entire draft. And if you're in a Dynasty League, you may be adding these players to your taxi squad just to take a chance to see if these guys will pan out. So don't ignore those later rounds and those sleepers. Do not ignore them. Another reason why you are failing and losing before, during, and after your rookie Dynasty League drafts is you are reaching for players, okay? Undrafted players and players with a late round draft grade should be drafted accordingly based on their draft capital, their landing spots, and their grade. If Jerome Ford was projected to go in the fourth, fifth round, then he should have been drafted in the fourth or fifth round. And you may have been even more afraid to draft him because he went to an unfavorable situation. I had him as a late round sleeper, but he went to a terrible situation, in my opinion, so I stayed away from him. He may pan out a few years from now, but I don't have a few years to consider when there were some other players on the board that went to better situations. Again, if it's an undrafted player, like say Ross, and you drafted after he was signed with the Chiefs, you looked at him in the 4th and 5th round. You didn't look at him in the 1st or 2nd round, because that would be crazy, because you have players who you know are guaranteed to be on rosters, and you're investing in those guys. You're not going to invest a first in a player who went undrafted in the NFL draft and is going to have to do a whole lot of work in order to stick with an NFL team. So don't reach for players. There's a difference between reaching for players and going to get your guy based on situations. Like I mentioned earlier, if you had to take Kenny Pickett because you didn't have any more picks in the 1st round and he was your guy, that is different. And the Treylon Burks example, he didn't have any more picks until I think like later rounds. So he got his guy because he wasn't going to be able to get his guy later on. That is different. Okay. And reaching goes back to doing your research. So all of these things tie into why you are failing and losing your rookie drafts. You're not researching. You're not taking the chances. And when you're taking chances, it has to be the right chance. And you're reaching for players, which people do, and they reach for several reasons. But there's a difference between reaching for a player that you have to draft because that's the guy you want and you don't have any more draft capital to acquire that player in that draft, and reaching for players because you just don't know what the heck you're doing because you didn't do your research. So do not reach for players. Know everyone's ADP and also know their landing spots and know what's going on in your league. That will help you limit the reaching for players, which can ruin your draft. If, say, you were to consider drafting Jerome Ford in the 1st round instead of taking, say, Cook or a Kenneth Walker, you're going to ruin your draft and everybody's going to be talking about you in the league. And in that case, I would say they should be talking and you should be listening. So do not reach. My number one reason why you are failing before, during, and after your rookie draft in a Dynasty League is because you are treating it as if it's a redraft league and a redraft draft. Yeah, a lot of draft. Okay, look, there is a difference and you have to play the game differently. You can't just draft players in a Dynasty League and say, especially your rookie drafts, oh, well, I'm going to have a chance to do it all again next year. You will be able to do it all again next year, but those players you drafted is going to stay with you. So you have to be smart and don't even consider how redraft is played when you are playing in a Dynasty League. This will ruin all of your drafts in your Dynasty League, the startup draft and every rookie draft. I have some people in some leagues that have teams in a Dynasty League that are old and they're looking like, oh, I have 2 quarterbacks who are really old, like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. That's not bad to have, especially in a redraft league, but long-term in a Dynasty League, these guys are going to retire at some point. So you have to consider, hey, I need to probably start drafting a younger quarterback. But some people play the game as if it's a redraft league and they draft as such. And you cannot do that. You have to plan for the future. So you don't want to draft all of the older players because you want to have a team that has some balance. Like you can do all young players and maybe do a combination of some vets and some younger players. However, if you draft an older team, at some point, you're going to get nervous and wonder, oh my God, this is a Dynasty League and I don't know what the heck I'm going to do because now my team is older and the performance is starting to decline. Players are starting to retire. What am I supposed to do? I like the combination of both veterans and some young players. And then some people like all young players. And I've watched several people draft a bunch of young players, which is fine because once they hit that peak, it's perfect. But if you have drafted an older team, your team is most likely starting to decline. And again, even when you are in your rookie drafts, the younger players have the most upside, in my opinion. Now, with the quarterbacks in this draft, obviously Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback with the draft capital. However, he has a lower ceiling because he was an older prospect. Now, if, say, Malik Willis or Matt Corral or Desmond Ridder had the first round draft capital that some of us were hoping for, would have been watching some of your drafts go a bit differently, meaning that some of the people in your league would have been taking more chances on players like Malik Willis, Ridder, and Corral if they had the draft capital that Kenny Pickett had, because the upside is more tremendous and they have a higher ceiling because they're younger. Again, Kenny Pickett was the most NFL ready, which is one of the reasons why the Steelers drafted him. But again, these guys didn't get the draft capital. But if they did, then some people would have taken, say, Malik Willis earlier. But it goes back to several factors have to be in place when you are considering making a pick and drafting a certain type of player, which it goes back to do your research. If you're not doing the research, you're going to lose every year. You're going to lose every year, whether it's redraft, keeper, or dynasty. And specifically a dynasty league, because you have a lot more research to do because you're looking at the rookies. It's a little easier in the redraft because you're not tied to the team. Dynasty, you're tied to the team. So you really want to make sure when you are preparing for your rookie draft, you are actually doing your homework to get to familiarize yourself with all of those players that you will potentially draft to be a part of your organization, because your team is your organization. You are the owner of that team, and you got to do what you got to do out here in these fantasy football dynasty streets to be successful. So again, do some research. Don't be afraid to take chances. Stop reaching for those players. Build your bench because players get hurt. Health is wealth. Availability is important. In the event one of your guys isn't available, someone on your bench is going to have to fill in. So work on your bench and stop drafting as if this is a redraft league, because it's dynasty, baby. It's totally opposite. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football and you want to improve your game so you can stay ahead of your competition for the upcoming season. Make sure you hit the like button and leave some comments and tell me some of the things you are struggling with during your rookie drafts. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast.